In 2018, the Idaho State Historical Society uncovered and digitized a film roll dating back to the 1960s. What they found was an unidentified news reporter trying to uncover the existence of tunnels beneath Boise, presumably built by Chinese immigrants. Rumors of these tunnel systems have circulated around Boise for decades, and this film was just another piece to the mystery. The only problem was, the audio was nowhere to be found. During the mid to late 1800s, Idaho and downtown Boise in particular was home to many Chinese immigrants. Once word caught on of gold mines in the Boise Basin area, thousands of immigrants arrived to earn money to send back to their families in China. This resulted in Boise having a Chinatown right in the heart of the city. For a while, this community thrived and helped build the early foundations of what Boise would become. However, today there are little to no signs of it having ever existed. After years of anti-Chinese policy and racist behavior toward immigrants, Chinatown slowly began to dwindle. Boise's Urban Renewal Project, or as some like to call it, the Urban Removal Project, eventually led to the last original Chinese building being removed in 1970. Much of this history is whitewashed, largely forgotten, or brushed under the rug entirely. Idaho and Boise schools don't include this in their curriculum. As a result, many locals have never even heard of Old Chinatown. But despite this, rumors and legends surrounding Boise's past still persist. For decades, rumors have circled around Boise of there being underground tunnel systems beneath the city, tunnels that connect local businesses and bars right where Chinatown used to be. A forgotten world hidden under our feet. These rumors have been disputed and many deny their existence to this day. On top of that, there has been an alarming amount of misinformation spread about these tunnels and their possible purpose. Racial stereotyping and claiming they were used solely for opium dens, gambling, or prostitution is common, but this is an exaggerated truth and taken way out of context. After hearing these rumors and seeing the Idaho Statesman article on the recently uncovered 1960s news story, we had to do some digging. We had to know if they were real, and if so, why had it been such a secret all these years? Starting with some basic research, it's hard to find anything reliable. There are books on Boise's Chinatown with old photos of the people, maps, and buildings that no longer exist. There are a few historical articles with vague information about this time period, but nothing solid, nothing mentioning the tunnels, nothing with any conviction anyways. We knew we had to look beneath the surface. There are Reddit threads where other curious locals have gone seeking answers. Many of these people have shared stories of having been in these tunnels themselves, knowing family that had been in them, and even mentioning which businesses they run through. This was reassuring and helpful, but most of these businesses have sealed off entrances into the tunnels, and many aren't too keen on letting random film students explore their basement. Going even further, we reached out to history professors at Boise State University whom had never even heard of such tunnels, and don't even bother calling City Hall because they don't want to disclose any information about this topic. Our research was coming to a standstill, and we didn't know where to turn. There are no reliable academic sources, no clear entrances, no remaining Chinatown residents, no one willing to help us, and perhaps our best source was completely missing the audio. It wasn't until our fellow film student, Nick, introduced us to a friend of his that our luck finally took a turn. For Mallory Seiniger, researching these tunnels has been a passion project for a few years now. She has covered all the bases, searched all the threads, talked to every source, and even interviewed a member of the Fong family who had a lot of influence in Chinatown through the 1900s. She's a Boise native and is extremely knowledgeable on the local history, particularly Chinatown.
Boise was a sundown city. It means that if you're not white, you're not allowed to be on the street after sunset. You have to be indoors because you're not white. Goldie's was for a long time a really big part of Chinatown. And the owner of that business, I spoke to his son, Edmund Fong, who's now like 85 or something. It was his parents are literally in the book on Chinatown in Boise. Edmund Fong, the son of the unofficial mayor of Chinatown, told me that his father told him that the tunnels exist. So Hump and Hannah, they knocked through all those walls. So when people talk about, oh, are they still accessible today? Sort of, in the sense that people don't realize that the doorways they go through there are actually Chinese tunnels. The Egyptian theater Right behind the Egyptian theater was the original Chinatown. So that is why the Egyptian theater, all of the underground is Chinese tunnels. Well, there was one that went from Goldie's across to the Egyptian. It was likely, and this is where it's sort of hard to tell, the Space Bar was an opium den. It's in the basement there. I think that we don't want to come off as racist. A lot of people don't remember it. I mean, we don't want to have that stereotype. We don't want to admit to that. They had what's called a queue. And so, you know, that long hair tail, it looks like a tail. You had to have one of those if you were a male and you wanted to go to China. If you cut off your queue, it was considered treason and you'd be beheaded. What we would do, it was called queue cutting. We come up behind a Chinaman on the street, grab their hair from behind, cut their queue off. What did that mean for them? They can't go back to China ever again. Like their whole they didn't want to stay here, you know? And so now we've made it, they can't leave. The Chinese are like a big reason why Boise is successful. Part of our identity, I think, should, you know, Boiseans or Idahoans' identity should be, you know, like, hey, let's embrace this. Let's apologize for that and apologize for the fact that we don't care enough and we didn't care enough to do anything about it. And we covered it up. The story of the Chinese is perseverance and resilience.
At the end of this, what we find is a whitewashed history, a city that is yet to face its racist past head on. These tunnels weren't just used for stereotypical reasons like opium or gambling, but the truth is these people were driven underground out of fear. Blatant racism, queue cutting, and a sundown curfew placed on anyone that wasn't white were more than valid reasons to need a tunnel system. It's possible these were made to help them navigate Boise without the fear of being harassed or arrested. This history of racism towards Asians is nothing new for Idaho. Our mistreatment of Chinese immigrants and the imprisonment of Japanese Americans during World War II are some major examples of this, both of which are barely spoken about today. This racist past should be acknowledged and taught for future generations to learn from and be better. Chinese people helped build Boise from the ground up, and we should all be proud of their contribution to this city.